can you just tell us a little bit about how it all came about?
Okay. So the film started as a PhD, so that's why it has far too many ideas probably. So it started as a practice-based PhD. Originally I was looking at a lot of films that were talking about memory and technology and their interaction and how they are affecting human identity. So there were tons of films that I got inspired from, and slowly the story was built up based on that. And I wanted to, because most of those science fiction films are showing more of a dystopia. So where it shows like technology is changing us, we're losing our humanity, and essentially love always wins, the majority of them. I wanted to go to something else, not to show necessarily dystopia. So how I call it, PhD is more like a critical dystopia. So it shows you the potential, and I left it to the audience to decide. So for you it might be horrifying, for other people it might be aspiring and inspiring and stuff. So it depends. So I had different years responding to it in a very different way, and that was the whole point, to give you the different options, and then you choose. So that was the origins, essentially, of film. So, do you want to say something more? No?
In terms of how people respond to it, one of the things we've heard from a lot of people is they'll identify with one or other of the three stories or characters, and that kind of says a lot. It's almost like a Rorschach test for yourself, whether you identify with someone who finds the whole situation quite pessimistic or quite optimistic or ethereal or whatnot. So in that way, the kind of three-act structure kind of helped that sort of debate that you were having.
I'm slightly shifting a bit here because I'm kind of like, I think Nicholas is in the room talking to us. So there's a kind of slight weirdness is going on. Thinking of as kind of there's lots of kind of interesting elements to it and kind of moments that particularly kind of struck me, but the scene where Jeanette is crying over the loss of her kind of VR lover, Douglas, right? I found particularly kind of fascinating, and that was kind of, that suddenly kind of generated all sorts of ideas. How plausible do you think this is as a vision? Do you think this is where we're hurtling towards?
Well, not because also, unfortunately, they didn't go into the final cut, but I have interviewed many scientists, neuroscientists, psychologists, as part of the PhD and as a support to the film, VR specialists, that they all backed this hypothesis, let's say, because I had we decided with a friend that he's a neuroscientist how that technology would work. So when I was presenting them, what if we had this technology, and I was presenting to them how it would work, and I asked them later on, do you think that condition would exist? And they all said emphatically yes. And as I said, they were from different professions and stuff. The idea was that we would be putting all those talking heads as we had in the beginning. We had a professor, a neuroscientist, but in the end we didn't manage to include it in the whole film. But yeah, it is. There were a lot of the psychologists part. They were saying already our memory is fragmented anyway, and we cannot remember things exactly as they actually have happened in the past. So if you mess that up with technology, then it's so easy. If the neurons, if you start reconstructing the neurons and their connections, it's very easy for them to create artificial memories, and that they will believe that actually really happened.
And as for falling in love with virtual characters, I think already in certain parts of the world, people are having virtual friends. Virtual pets and Tamagotchi have been around for years, and I'm sure that many people have cried over their dead Tamagotchi, and that's a little tiny thing I watch. And so I think we have the capacity inbuilt in us to fall in love and to develop a bond and to develop care for something, regardless of how human or realistic it is. So if you take that to the level where it actually does resemble a completely human, realistic life, then I have no doubt that people would fall in love with the artificial life forms or virtual life forms.
Interesting. I mean, this is quite a kind of schizophrenic, kind of terrifying vision in some way in the future. Are you worried about us as a human race? Are you concerned?
Well, for me, the main
The
character.
NHS seems to be solid.
Yes. Actually, I had a discussion the other day because we were discussing with a friend of a friend that is a psychologist, and I was telling him about mnemophrenia because it is a combination of two words, of mnemonic, which from mnemi, which is the Greek word for memory, and schizophrenia, the phrenia. And he said already they have started talking about virtual reality, that there are people already confusing virtual reality with real life. So it's already kind of happening, which I didn't know, found out only last week. What I think about it, for me the main character of the film is the third character, or the point of view. And it's more the hope of something else, something more transcendent. So if I take it from the film, personally I would like to see more the light and the hope. But yeah, as a possibility, obviously that is what I'm trying to say with the film. It is the technology itself is not bad, it's how we use it. So it can go really bad, it can go good. So I don't take science so much in that way.
So as to how much you believe in virtual reality, I recently bought a VR headset purely for research. I don't know how many of you have actually tried VR, but the graphics are kind of low resolution. They're obviously game graphics, and yet you feel the solidity of objects around you. Like the first time you tried it.
And the second time, okay, but I
Oh,
felt.
second try. She felt
because I really wanted to lean on the table
to read
which was
something,
not real.
so she leaned on something that wasn't there and fell over. And I felt after even just an hour of playing in VR, I take off the headset and I'm walking around my house and I'm kind of thinking, is this, just for milliseconds almost, but I'm thinking, is this wall real? Is this door real? How do I open? Oh, I actually do it with my hand, right. So again, if you take that technology on 10 years, 20 years, let alone 50 years, it will be indistinguishable at a certain point from real life. And even now, you know, our brains are so hardwired to try and make sense of objects in the world. So we'll take it and we'll incorporate it.
Interesting. I was quite intrigued by the element of FLM and the idea that the anarchists are out there. Is this something you wanted to? Is this some kind of underlying political message you wanted?
No. It just because I was thinking in the story structure that they would be people that they are hardcore Mnemophrenics, that they would like everybody to become. Because at Nicholas time, it's almost, let's say, 50% of the society is Mnemophrenics, 50 are not. So there is already an issue and there is a stigma being a Mnemophrenic. I was thinking that there definitely would have been a group of people that they can see that the potential of the condition and what the humans could become, and that they could potentially, as Nicholas has discussed, there's a connection, like through Mnemophrenia, that you can connect with everyone. And it's more about the empathy and understanding each other. So it's not necessarily that they are there to burn the world. It's more that they feel that the non-Mnemophrenics, they haven't seen the potential, which obviously can create friction between the two sides.
There is kind of an underlying social theme there as well, which I'm sure resonates with what we're going through today, but I'm not sure that this is really what you intended to put in, but it's just kind of definitely relevant, is when societies start changing rapidly. That engenders a lot of fear in the endemic population. They don't want to be changed, and the people who are coming in don't want to be seen as a threat, and all this kind of thing. So in Jeanette's time, it's only just starting out, so it's just being seen as an illness. In Robin's time, confusingly, you used the character name Robin. In the last part, everyone is mnemophrenic, but in my time, only half are, and you can imagine there would be a lot of social friction in that age, and there would be a lot of politically active groups like FLM. There would be a lot of
or the opposite of that, obviously, of FLM. Definitely, it's just the FLM would want to contact the person that is that invented that technology, because they want that technology to use it for their own means, for their own reasons. Yeah.
Interesting. Shall we throw it open for questions? Yeah. Do we have any questions? We have a microphone coming. Thank you, Patricia.
I was just going to say I've had a couple of experiences with VR. Recently, a very high resolution VR in Xi'an, out at the Terracotta Warriors, and also in Rome at the Domus Aurea. Really extraordinary way that ancient Rome is brought back vividly to life. But I had a friend with a VR company in the 1980s and 1990s, and so a lot of looking at those lab scenes, what was missing was the context, because my experience of knowing people who were interested in the developmental aspects of VR, and I did some of the early headset experiences with them, was they were very, this came out of their own interest and experimentation with magic mushrooms, with LSD, with mysticism, going to canyons in New Mexico and having visions. With a lot of sort of spirituality. There was the whole technology was there, obviously a very good control of the technology, but then there was this whole context of these sort of hallucinogenic experiences, but mystical experiences as well. So I wondered if you had thought about that.
No, because first of all, I didn't take it from having that kind of background, because I took it from more the nerdy side of, because they were the side of more LSD and acid tripping, but I'm pretty sure in the 80s and 90s also there were a lot of scientists and computer geeks that they were aspiring for a different kind of experience and stuff through VR. So I took it much more, as I said, from mostly from my references and stuff were originally the films that I got inspired from. So the whole film has reference to many other films. So they are much more than the social context, the real social context of VR and how in real world we actually start developing VR. And I threw the audience in already in a world where I didn't give them any context here. So I'm already starting it like you already know what VR is. Not assuming that they know, it's just I started with them putting them in the deep water, let's say, from the get-go, without trying to explain anything else. And I don't explain much either the condition itself, so I'm trying for the audiences to try to understand and put the puzzle together, as the condition is a little bit, creates that kind of a puzzle experience, because if you take different memories from different places. So yeah, I didn't have that as a background as much, but I'm aware of it.
I think in the context you're talking about in the 60s and 70s,
No, this is 80s
Oh,
and 90s.
in okay, even then, because the technology wasn't there, I suppose they would have used psilocybin and all these compounds as their technology, and those compounds are still around now, but we have people growing up whose spiritual context is computer games, virtual reality, and the digital world. And I think in Nicholas's time, they would get their spiritual experiences from their Mnemophrenia and their virtual reality. So, yeah, I totally take what you're saying, but I think they would grow up in a different environment and have different kind of influences.
Well, they have the technology, and in fact, another interesting connection with your film was one of the Rockefellers was the investor in the film, but the connection was also that they could get him his LSD. So they're very interested in LSD, but he saw this as an important business investment. Yeah. Interesting.
Thank you. Any other questions? One right at the back.
Exercise.
So I was just wondering, sort of, I knew it was in sort of separate parts initially, as I was going to put together here, but roughly how long did the whole filming process take? And then how long afterwards did the editing process take?
So the whole film, including the editing, took 8 years. And each part was shot as a short film. So the first part was shot like in 2011, the second part 2013, and the third part 2016. And so they're long apart. Back in 2011, nobody really in mainstream was talking about VR. Nowadays, maybe the time is good because VR is much more mainstream, so people understand it more. So maybe there was a reason why it took so long. So essentially, I treated them as short films. And when we started editing, to be honest, it was like 2017. It took about a year, including sound design and effects.
Couple of years for those graphics.
The graphics took more than that, yeah, a year and a half. And nobody was getting paid, by the way, so that's why everything was taking long. And when we had the 3 short films, let's say, it was very scary because we didn't know when we would put them back together, if they will actually work. So it was me and Giorgio, the editor, we were really worried of how we will manage to films that were made so many years apart, if they will look like that they belong in the same film. But thank God, I think it does look okay. It doesn't look that. But yeah, it was a very, very long process. So one reason was mostly because it's self-funded, so I needed to take that long. And second, because I did develop all the characters and dialogues with improvisation. So each part was used for the next part for the actors to watch it in order to develop their characters based on what preceded them, because it was their memories, because they were getting the memories from the previous generation, so they needed to watch what has happened before them. So it was a long process in different ways. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, no, I did answer it. I have another one.
Yeah.
Did you do all the effects and all the graphics yourself? Or did
No.
you get someone to do it?
No. I had a person, Lauren O'Connell, that she absolutely is the best. I have never met her in person. We have Skyped only once. And she lives in San Diego. And she did the work for a year and a half. After me, I think she's the only one that worked so much in the film. We built the user interface from the font and what color it would be to second by second, frame by frame. So it took her a really long time.
It's quite an it's not it's quite a saturated image. That I don't mean saturated in colour. I mean in information.
Yeah.
It's very information rich. All that stuff. You kind of zone out after a while, and it fades into your peripheral. But there's important information conveyed in that occasionally as well.
Because many friends say, "Oh, should I pay attention to the graphics?" And I say, if you miss the graphics, don't worry, you will still get the story. This thing is when you watch it again, because most of my friends actually wanted to watch it the second time to make sure that they got it. Is that the second time round, when they start paying attention to the graphics, they start to understand there is an extra layer of information there that is being given. Yeah, but it's not necessary to follow the graphics the first time, at least. Yeah.
Thank you. Question here?
Well, my question is very quick, really. I don't need a microphone. I just wanted to know whether the actors are professionals or...
Yeah,
Okay.
they are all
And
professional.
they also work for free?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
the actors are the ones that they all went through the audition process and stuff, and that's how I cast them. So they are not friends or yeah. You see, we'll make you exercise.
So thank you. So I'm also one person who has to see the movie a second time in order to to fully get it. Now my question is: so far you discussed a lot about virtual reality, and I agree with all you said. But the headset and the brain chip is what kind of caught my attention, which is also because it's my area of research. So what do you think is that? So where does this go? Because you gave a kind of prediction of what virtual reality happened in the past, and you say 20 years from now this will be
I don't
happening?
think any. First of all, I don't really like to make predictions in the sense of dates. That's why on purpose I didn't put dates, because Blade Runner is happening right now in Los Angeles. So I wouldn't want to put on that, but
It will be a bet on predictions, so.
yeah. So, but especially for Nicola's time, the second period, supposedly the virtual reality experience encompasses all the senses, and that is extremely difficult to do. So I don't think it will be coming anytime soon, but I would imagine one day it will be a reality. Yeah, for sure.
But you're talking more about in the third part where she's got the chip in her brain recording
Or
her every day.
Yeah, I work on brain-computer interfaces, and so this I got sucked into this part of the movie without forgetting the love story and all this. This was kind of too much an engineer.
Fascinates me the stuff I've seen on the work that's been done on in terms of so far paraplegics being able to move robotic arms and things like this, move a cursor around the screen. So the brain can be trained to move virtual objects. But at the moment it's quite mechanical, isn't it? In terms of actually recording an experience with all the emotions and memories that I'm sure it will be there one day, because we are just kind of meat-bag robots after all. We'll decode ourselves one day, but a little way off.
Yeah, but that's a longer discussion.
Yeah.
Go into this. Because there were some other questions.
Yes, there's another one down here.
Down here first. Down here first.
Karen in the middle here first.
Karen.
No. Sorry, I'm trying to take control. Sorry.
Just to come back to that comment, the other point is it would have been developed much faster if it hadn't been poured into military research. Howard Rheingold makes that point in his book, because it's been around in the Sensorama and the Cinerama since the 1950s, and the precursors of it, even in science fiction, the Feelies in Aldous Huxley, and even Madame Bovary. The fact, she can't tell the difference between reality and fiction. But to make a film about this, isn't it also the end of cinema? And I just wanted, to know how you
but that's why when I was presenting it and as part of in the PhD thesis, I don't call it the death, but I call it the future of cinema.
The future of cinema.
So I'm spinning it in a different way, but yeah, it is a different kind of cinematic experience. I do believe VR will be the next thing, but 3D still hasn't caught up. I mean, 3D hasn't managed to do as well as everybody thought, the immersive experience. So let's see, but I do believe that VR will be at some point, but it just takes away, obviously, that what we're experiencing right now, the group experience. Everything will be much more of an individual experience.
I mean, one thing I found really interesting about your film is the death at the end. You know, the material death at the end. It's not about downloading memory and thereby living forever because you can download memory, but it is that the mourning of the material physical body. And I thought that was interesting compared to, you know, other films of that genre, Brainstorm or Strange Days or something.
Well, the thing is, because obviously it is referencing both films, is that she's really giving him, because when she's asking her partner to get the implant as well, she's implying that she will give him her memories. So she kind of lives through him because he can experience her. So there is kind of a download, but in a different way, which I'm leaving it up to the audience to. I don't necessarily sell it like, she has been downloaded in his brain kind of thing.
But that goes almost to sort of zombie theory as well. I don't mean zombie as in eating people, but the appearance of being real without consciousness being there. She lives on for everyone else, but does her subjective experience carry on? That's another question. To your first point as well, we have every time a new technology is invented, we kind of append it to what we already have. We still go out to South as well to see dance, to the theatre, to see live performances. We still go to
we listen
concerts.
To radio.
Yeah, we still do all these things, but we just also now can play VR. And I think as well as there's something very different about the interactive entertainment experience where you are part of the story than we will always as well want the curated experience, something where we can have a filmmaker or a storyteller tell us their story and we can be invited into their world for an hour and surrender our will to theirs. And so I think those things, I don't think cinema is dead is what I'm trying to say.
Well, thank you.
Anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Don? Nina.
It's better be good now after all this waiting.
How much did you stick to your original idea since the moment you started writing it?
Very much so. So
because you said you did a lot of improvisation.
Yeah, but the improvisation was built on the story. They were not influencing the story, they didn't know the story. So it was very funny, after the first part finished, one of the actors was creating rumors of what he thinks the rest of the film would be about. He was creating a thriller or something, a completely different film. And he started making everybody else believe how the film will actually be later on. But no, so I had a very clear story structure and how each story will be combined and how they will affect each other. But I wasn't giving all that information to the people, to my actors. So it's slowly built and slowly they were finding out where we were getting to. Because that's how I managed to get much more natural performances and dialogues from them. Because they were not aiming for their end goal, because they didn't know what their end goal would be.
Yeah.
I don't know how you want it.
Well, I had a slightly different experience to the rest of the cast because I helped produce it as well. So I was a crew for the first part, and then I was cast for the second part, and crew again for the third part, and it helped some of the production and a little bit of the writing and the script So I had a slightly privileged position in that, so I could see what you were doing, but I was also involved in it as well for the second part. And yeah, she had a very, very clear idea of where the end point was at all times, but that sort of makes it sound like she was imposing that on us. We had a lot of freedom within the improvisations to guide our characters and those debates, but the framework.
I mean, at some point, the guy that said, that I'm using VR experience because I cheated on my wife, and then at some point in the improvisation workshop, he said, okay, he reveals to everybody else, okay, I killed my wife. And I told him, no, you haven't killed your wife. So when they were trying to take it to a different route than from what I would have wanted, I was putting the brake on, but other than that, they had the freedom to develop the character. Yeah, yeah, exactly. When everybody.
Actually, one of the character who was in the lab with me, my friend Will, Jamie in real life, he is a real life data scientist. Is that right?
No, like
a neuroscientist.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and he worked with Google.
Yeah, with the
well.
Google.
So he actually brought a lot of technical information as well as everything else.
And he still now works with wearable technology and stuff. So a lot of our terminology.
So that was kind of serendipitous.
Yeah.
One final question, I think, probably.
I think
maybe we can do both. Go on.
So, know that obviously the use of neural and virtual reality was in there, but I was wondering, because it being the main course idea, was there any mixed hybrid stimulation used for the idea of developers, or?
Sorry, because I didn't hear from the door. You said the hybrid?
Yeah, so virtual reality and neurals being used as the main course idea to create this, but was there any hybrid other stimulation ideas used as well, or?
It was supposedly the headset. What is it doing? It is targeting specific parts of the neuron, and they're stimulating. So essentially, it's almost like that's why they don't need to move. They can have the experience without necessarily. They don't have this motor sensor experience. It's like almost stimulating it directly to the brain. Supposedly the second part headset. So, and it creates those, obviously my friend that came up with the hypothesis would have been better being a neuroscientist. So it is kind of, because it stimulates very, very specific parts of the brain, and the whole idea is that something went wrong with the technology, and different neural connections. It was a mistake in the technology that created the condition. It wasn't always, never that was never the aim, obviously, of the technology. But I don't know if I answered your question, but the idea is that it stimulates parts of the brain as well. Is that answering, or kind of?
It was sort of an idea, but wasn't aimed at my particular question, but thank you anyway.
Okay.
And then, final question down here from John.
Thank you very much. Really interesting film. I think I'm one of the ones who needs to see it twice. But I've just got a couple of questions that are interrelated. The first question is, why does the virtual lover, Douglas, suddenly decide that he's going to Australia, just as things are getting interesting?
Because the idea is, which we don't explain there were parts, as I said, that didn't manage to get to the final cut, is that they are all tailor-made virtual experience. So you have to answer a very, very detailed questionnaire of what kind of preference from what color you like, what music you like, so whoever they create for you, they really match you. And you can also decide when you're ready to go, when you want to stop slowly the experience. So he tells her that he needs to go because she needs to go to university. So she is ready to stop, essentially, to break up with him. So he needs to leave. However, he gives her an open window, telling her, you know, I can always come back. So there's
your corporate.
the corporate greed is there that
upselling the later experience.
yes, he leaves here. He leaves it open for her that if you want, you know, we don't have to say goodbye. I can always come back, and you can always buy more product, essentially.
The second question is, which is related, is she's sort of in love with him to the extent that you know, she prefers his company to that of her husband.
Mm.
Now, virtual reality, as I understand it, recreates a world of objects, and it recreates the subjective sense of moving through that world of objects. But how can it recreate language, let us say, other than in a very generic sense, if you like? I mean, I thought of his pattern was extremely generic.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking, how could she fall in love with a guy like that?
Because she was 17.
Sorry?
She was 17.
Nice.
And he was, as many people, sorry to interrupt you, many
Yeah.
people tell us, oh my God, either women really like him and other women don't like him
Right.
because they find him very cheesy. And I said, well, exactly that. She falls for him because he's everything she wants. He's caring, good listener, cares about her, to talk about the problems of the family. Environmentalist. So he ticks all the boxes for what she likes.
Yeah, I can see that. I guess the bigger question behind that is can virtual reality, I mean, the world of language is a different ballgame than the world of objects. You know, you can invent a computer that can beat the best grandmaster in the world at chess. But that's still not kind of mastering, let's say, language. And so I guess my question is, how can you have a conversation, a proper conversation, with an entirely virtual partner?
That's why I'm making a science fiction film.
Fair enough, yeah.
And it's kind of then it goes into the realms of artificial intelligence as well. This technology wouldn't just be a rendering machine, rendering, like you say, physical objects and so on, but would also encompass an artificial intelligence, natural language engine, with kind of storytelling parameters and a virtual storyteller.
Which doesn't exist. That's what we are saying. It's not there yet today. But they are really trying to have an artificial intelligence, and if they are passing for humans at the moment.
There is also there's a difference between a kind of contemporaneous interactive virtual environment where you're interacting in real time and it's interacting back, or there's an implanted memory where it's been written and curated by someone, then it can be as written as you like. So we're ambiguous about what that technology is.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Sorry, we really must wrap up now. We're going to get thrown out soon.
Sorry, can I just have a quick show of hands? Who came away thinking that was pessimistic, downbeat, and who thinks it?
Only one.
Only one and a half.
No,
And who thought it was kind of gave us hope for the future? Okay.
And all the rest are neutral.
Because
the majority is neutral.
Both possibilities.
Yeah. All the rest are on the fence. Okay.
Or still thinking about it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
You feel happy with that? Good. We'd just like to give them a round of applause. Thank you very much for coming.